All right, we're going to do a first test run of this 12 valve out of a 94 Dodge 250. I bought it. I sold it to a friend, the whole truck. He pulled the P pump, the front cover, and everything off to do a 24 valve P pump conversion. And then I bought it back, and it didn't come with the front cover of the P pump, which I sourced from Peg over at Zip Ties. And yeah, I just got it all back together and timed, and we'll see if the thing will start. Not enough battery power. Always battery power. So I bled every individual injector line to try and get the air out. And it's running a little better, but it's still, I got the air out, but it still sounds like the valve set's really bad. So now that I've test run it, I'm gonna reset the valves again. And then we'll start it again and see what we can do, and I can slowly make it sound like it's supposed to. So my valve set, I don't remember if I set the valves when I put this thing back together or not, because the push rods were all out of it, I believe. I don't remember what the details were. Buddy had stolen a bunch of stuff off of it. And I don't remember if I set the valves or not, which is kind of goofy for trying to start it. It did start and run, but the valve set was way out. So I'm adjusting it. A lot of people tell you that you have to follow certain procedures and stuff like that, but not really. This place is like an engine graveyard. But anyway, I want to show you guys something that you guys should take to heart. So we're talking about valve sets, and this doesn't really matter what engine it is, because it makes no difference. It makes no difference what engine you're working on. None. Anybody that tells you that a V8 needs a special valve set from a V6, from an inline 4, from an inline 6, they're all the same. And that is, if you don't know how to set the valves, and you don't know what order to set the valves, or if you're finding too many different orders, all you have to know is you can set the one if the other one's rocking. So if you turn the engine over and this one's down, rocked, like compressing the spring, it means you can set that one on the same piston, right? That's it. That's the whole process. So if you use a paint marker and you set this one, and then as you crank it over, you might have to crank it more that way. But if you don't know the order and you don't have good information, that's how you can set and do an entire valve set without any particular order or anything. If one of them's rocking, the other one's good. Simple as that. You don't need to look any further into that at all. I do it all the time. Try finding information on a 120-year-old engine when you're trying to set the valves. It doesn't exist, so you have to just wing it. So I did a valve set. The valve set was way out, which leads me to believe that I didn't do a valve set before. I just put everything back together. And of course, I didn't put the push tubes back in their original location. So that would explain why it was, all wrong. And then this thing does have a pretty substantial rear main oil seal leak, which is whatever to be expected on an old engine like this when you don't know anything about the history other than that it had a lot of mileage. And yeah, we're going to test run it again. See if it sounds better. that was easy. Needed a valve set. So after bleeding the injection lines, which is really easy, by the way, there's a million. The reason I don't go more into detail with this stuff is because there's a million videos on YouTube of people explaining this stuff. So yeah, after you've done any work to the injection pump or replaced it like I did, this thing had been sitting in a van forever with the injection lines off. So I ran a drill on it and had it pressurized with fuel, and I cycled fuel through it until it came out the top clean. And then I ran fuel through all the lines like that, and then with all these lines loose. And when I got fuel at all the lines, at every connection, then I just set it all up. Put the gear on, timed it, all that fun stuff. And then it was pretty much good to start. There was no a whole bunch of cranking or anything to get the air out of the lines because it was mostly good. And then once it was running, you just individually crack each line until it get a little bit of the air out. And you can usually hear it. When you tighten the line back up, the engine sound changes. It'll go from, it'll run good, go to having a miss when you loosen it. And then when you tighten it, it'll run a little better and a little better as you get air out of the lines. And then the valve set too, like once you've done it, the intakes are 10 thou, the exhausts are 20 thou. And I got that off of a random Google search, so someone could be lying to me too. But all I did was did a basic valve set, and now it sounds phenomenal, the engine. What's next? So I made some slight exhaust modifications because I've already done a Ford. And I've already done a Chev diesel. So now we just had to do a Dodge / Cummins diesel. And yeah, this was the easiest one of all of them to do because it's an inline. Like everything else, inlines are just always easier to work on. Yeah, let's see what it sounds like. Yep, pretty sweet. Completely pointless. It went from being 160 horsepower to probably 100 horsepower or less. But it was just for fun. Unless somehow I can convince old Peg at Zip Ties and Bias Plies to put one of these with that zoomie in the Derby. Yep, that's the plan.